Greetings and salutations, friends and gamers of all stripes. My name is GM Dave, I am your man behind the screen, and welcome to part 2 of our mini-series on character backgrounds and motivations, where today we will be looking at faith and conviction. Now, before we get started, I would like to ask you all to please forgive the road noise. I listened back to the previous audio recording, and the road noise was pretty loud. I hope it's not going to be too bad. I will be going in before I actually upload the videos and editing down the road noise as best I can, cutting back on some of the bass. So hopefully that will curb it. If it doesn't, I do hope you forgive me. The spoken part of it was still audible. It is still, hopefully you're still able to understand what I'm saying. So yeah, fingers crossed that this is not going to be a major issue, but yes, please do forgive that. That was an unfortunate accidental oversight. I was not expecting that to be nearly as loud as it ended up being. I think it's due largely to the inclement weather conditions. But with all that preamble now out of the way, we are continuing from where we left off, moving on from the sense of duty as a background motivator, as that initial push that drives your character to adventure, to now the sense of faith and conviction. Faith and conviction, interestingly, were something that in prior eras, or I don't really know if eras is necessarily the right phrase, but prior decades, you would see more characters who drove themselves with that kind of motivation than you really do nowadays. And I think that's due in part to a lot of cultural changes that are happening in first world society these days. Faith and conviction in religion and belief in gods, things like that, the kind of things that we typically associate with faith. Well, they're not as important to a lot of people nowadays, particularly in more liberal areas, like where I live in California. A lot of people out here, myself included among them, are atheistic or agnostic. But the interesting thing is I do have a pretty strong understanding of the power of faith and conviction, not only because of the frequent pursuit of current events that I indulge in simply because I find it important and interesting, but also because of the fact that I used to be a person of faith. I used to be fairly religious. Not very deeply so, but fairly religious. I did take catechism classes as a child. I did learn a lot about the Catholic faith, and I was a relatively devout Catholic when I was younger. The point of the matter is that I understand how powerful a motivator, how powerful a driver faith can be. So I find it kind of interesting that as a motivator for characters, as a driver for characters, it's sort of fallen by the wayside. And that even includes the characters for whom it is essential, such as paladins and clerics within Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder. These are characters who quite literally channel the power of their faith into incredible abilities, and yet so often the faith aspect is thoroughly downplayed with them. So today I want to look at how and why faith can be such a powerful motivator, why that conviction can really drive people to commit both great deeds and atrocious deeds. Because as anyone who has looked even remotely at history can tell you, yes, faith can drive people to do wonderful things, and it can also drive people to do terrible things. So let's get started. Faith within one's background. We need to understand, first and foremost, why is it that your character has the faith that they do? Now, one of the most common reasons why people believe the things they believe is because it was instilled in them as children. a lot of people who are religious remain religious because as children, that's what their parents and their communities taught them. That's what they were told is true, is real. So they stick to that because it's what they know. The same is, that's true of all faiths. Much of the time, it is the young who have that instilled in them, and they just carry it into adulthood. But for characters who are driven by their faith to move forward, there needs to be a little more to it than that. It can't just be that they have this instilled in them. There needs to be something that pushes them forward. And for an example of that, we're going to look to one of the clerics that I've played in the past, who I have spoken of before as well. In fact, I made an entire video about her. Shay Ushana, who was my cleric of the Cult of the Secret Fire. Shay joined this cult as a child because she was taken into an orphanage as a street urchin. There, she was taught the ways of the cult and basically indoctrinated into it. Now, in normal circumstances, that would have just meant that she followed their beliefs, she stuck to their doctrines, practiced their worship. However, she began to manifest power through that faith. Her conviction grew very deep, not just because she believed hard enough, but because these people saved her from the streets. She still lived a poor life. She still wasn't especially, she wasn't wealthy at all. She was still essentially, around the same status as a beggar, particularly because in the setting where this cult is the most prominent, in my setting where this cult is prominent, they are not well regarded outside of their station. People who are on the lower rungs of society appreciate them, let's say, because they do good works. They will help people. But, they're not exactly trusted. However, they saved her. They pulled her off the streets, they gave her a purpose, and she dove full on into that purpose, to the point that whatever it is that the Secret Fire really is, be it actually manifestation of some kind of god, or if it is simply a powerful elemental lord that they draw power from, their acolytes, Shay became one of these people that was able to draw this power. She was able to manifest fire magically, and through her continued studies, through her continued teachings, that only grew greater. And so her conviction grew greater. She took this as a sign that this was her path, this was her purpose, and she would follow it to the end. Whatever was needed of her, whatever the cult asked her to do, she would do it. This is, in, no mixed words to say that, yes, Shay is a zealot. She is absolutely a zealot. She represents a bit more of an extreme when it comes to a character driven by faith. But the point here is to showcase that there is an element outside of just believing in it that pushed her to do this. It was the appreciation she felt to the acolytes of the Secret Fire for saving her life. It was the conviction she found in their teachings once the powers started manifesting in her, once she was able to start channeling the magical fires of the faith. Once she saw these effects, her conviction, her belief only grew more steadfast. And that then eventually pushes her to adventure. She goes out not only to spread the good word, but to defend her faith. As I said, they're not exactly well regarded. They have enemies, some of which were enemies they made for themselves. So she goes out to ward off these enemies, which is to say, yeah, she's been used as an assassin sometimes. Point being, that kernel, that initial push, is brought in by a multitude of elements that foster and bolster that faith. The faith alone is not the only thing. So consider that when you're developing your character's background. Now, when it comes to the goal, that's considerably easier. Your goal is to see your faith through, is to make sure you're adhering to the things you believe. Unlike the duty where it's the goal that needs to be built upon, for faith, a lot of times the conviction in the faith is the goal. Personal goals will ride alongside that, but they will almost always tie back into fulfilling your duties, adhering to the tenets of your faith. And that's one of the things that I've always found interesting about characters who are based on faith. That's actually one of the reasons why in 5th edition, apart from the mechanical reasons, clerics became my favorite characters to play. It's because the faith they have, the faith that pushes them into adventure initially, is also the exact same element that defines their goal. And it's an ever-moving goal. There's never one single set thing that you're going out to achieve. It is the fulfillment of faith itself that is the goal. The fulfillment of your dogma, the following of your tenets and doctrines. Those are your goals. And oftentimes, that makes your goals very easy to tie into the campaign. However, it's the motivation that becomes the tricky question here. Now, obviously your faith is motivating you, but why is your faith motivating you to do the specific thing you're doing here? Why is your faith motivating you to go on an adventure? What is it about your faith, about your beliefs, about your doctrines, or maybe about the organization of faith, the church, the cult, the monastery, the temple, what have you? What is it that is making it so that you feel driven to keep going? Excuse me. Sorry, I had a hiccup there. Now, it's easy to say, oh, it's the faith itself. It's, the dogmatic view, blah, blah, blah. It's very easy to say that, but that's very nebulous. We want to get more specific than that. So, this time, with the motivations, talk to your GM and start working out how and why is it that this plot might have your character look at it, might have your character looking at this situation and saying, I have a feeling that my god, or gods, as is often going to be the case, or the organization you work with, or whatever it is, whatever core area, core group, core principle it is behind your faith, something about that needs to tie into the overall plot of the campaign to act as your motivation for why you're going out and exploring the world, following through on this plot, adventuring with these people, especially when they might not even believe what you believe. What is it about that which drives you to do so? In the case of Shay, it was orders given to her from her cult. As an acolyte, she felt that it was her place to follow the orders she was given. That was how she professed her faith. And by doing this, by following her orders, she was then also securing the safety and security of her cult. Or so she believed. So her motivation was based on what she felt was her place and purpose within the Cult of the Sacred Flame. However, it doesn't necessarily have to be something like that. It could also be something like wanting to spread the faith. And let's be honest here, that's the most common one you're going to see for clerics and paladins and the like who are going and adventuring. They're doing it to spread the faith or defend the church or what have you. However, it could also just be the desire to do good works. Maybe it's just that they have certain deeds that they want to commit. A good cleric might not be going out necessarily to spread word of their faith, but could just be going out to do good deeds, because that's the kind of teachings that are in their religion. Do good unto others, practice your faith by doing good deeds unto others. An evil cleric might be driven to do the exact opposite, to spread strife and suffering, through subtle ways. Or perhaps even you're going on a pilgrimage of some kind. Perhaps the place that the adventurers are ultimately going to, or the place you're ultimately trying to reach along this path, the reason why you're originally traveling with these people is you're leaving on a pilgrimage. You're trying to go to maybe the first temple of your religion, because it's an incredibly holy place, or a mausoleum that interred a saint of your faith. Consider all these things and talk to your GM to help define the motivator that will determine why it is your character specifically is going on this journey. Because that's the key difference. Whereas with the character who's defined by the sense of duty, will be motivated by their sense of duty directly, a character who's defined by their sense of faith will have the set goal of fulfilling the tenets of their faith and sticking to that. But how they are motivated to adventure to achieve that is a much trickier question. And that's about all I have for you today, friends and gamers of all stripes. If you like this video, please feel free to leave a like, comment down below with your thoughts, subscribe, hit the bell notification button, and most importantly, share it around to your friends who you think might enjoy it. Make sure to open the description box down below and follow me on my social media accounts. Minds.com in particular is the best one to follow me on, because that is the best place to actually reach me the most directly if you want to discuss anything about my videos or the other projects I'm working on. Speaking of other projects, make sure to take a look at Phoenix Rising. We're not going to be putting out an installment for the month of December, but in January, we'll be right back with it, and we'll be reaching the climax of this first major story arc that we've been exploring. Before then, moving on to the next place, we'll be finally, very soon, getting ready to leave the jungles of Takand for a new location. I'm very excited for what's coming up in that. Lastly, make sure to follow my BitChute account as well, because all of my videos are automatically backed up there. So if something should happen on YouTube, and let's face it, it is fairly likely because YouTube is getting to be a little bit shitty again, well, you can find everything that I've made over on BitChute as well. And with that now said and done, friends and gamers of all stripes, once again, my name is GM Dave. I am your man behind the screen, and I would like to remind you all once more that when it comes to the realm of tabletop gaming, you don't just want to watch. Get in there and game. Have a good one.